and I want to bring him up now, Nathan Reynolds.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. How you guys doing? Yeah? Yeah, that was a little excited. Come on, can you be like a little excited? I know it's like almost dinner time, and it's been a while for a lot of you guys, but are you guys pretty excited that you've been here at this conference? See, more than that though, I've got a chance to ask so many of you what it is that you are here for. Why is it that you actually came here? Like, the why is very important, and for me it's something that I simply need to know. I need to understand why people like you would choose to come to a place like this, gather together and be willing to suffer the scourge of public opinion, the mockings, the belittlings. Why are you willing to do that? Truth. See, I've got to hear all kinds of different answers over the week, got to hear different people's whys, and what I heard resounding through each and every one of them was this deep hunger that you had for something that you believe this world has deprived you of. That is truth, that is passion, that is honesty, that is conviction, that is something that matters more than the meaningless, mundane lives that we're living, grinding away our existence, slaving away in systems that are controlled by things that are outside of our ability to comprehend. Why is it that you are going to come here? Some of you have given up so much to be here. Some of you, this cost you everything you have and even all that you didn't. You took time off of work that you couldn't afford to take. You paid bills that you couldn't pay with hope that it would show up later on because you paid for it instead by coming here. You put that stuff to the side because you believed this was more important. You sacrificed your time, the one commodity every single one of us has in equal abundance. You sacrificed it to come and listen to people that the world would say are the definitions of idiots. We have been made to believe that the phrases and the topics that we're discussing here are the definitions of stupidity. That this is stuff that is science settled this a long time ago. Why are we even talking about these things? Why are we talking about conspiracies? Why are we talking about fringe areas of our lives and beast systems? Why are we talking about all this? Because each and every one of you has a common trait inside you that's burning away, that is fire for something that you cannot comprehend in that system. It's truth. It's truth that you're hungry for, because we're starving for it. You're starving for something other than what the world is willing to give you when you go to work, when you talk to your coworkers, when you talk to these people that used to be your best friends that now look at you like you have three heads suddenly. Like before you weren't stupid. Before you were just their friend. Before you were their sister, brother, husband, wife, boss, director, CEO, actor. So many of you have held different positions. You've had many hats that you've worn over your life. You've had passions, things that you loved to do, things that you were so hungry to do that you couldn't even wait till you finally had a chance to go out there and pursue it with everything in you. But slowly, incrementally, the passion, the hunger, the joy, the satisfaction you found in the things that made you who you were eroded away. It was broken off of you intentionally. Over time, people came along in your life and chipped off pieces from you, who you were, your identity. And they stole those. And like any good thief, they used that for their gain. They figured out a way to profit off of your suffering, profit off of your pain, profit off of the misery. Not only profit, but to find pleasure in it, but to find satisfaction in it, to find contentment in it. Many of you here have seen me in the background or seen my booth in the corner, and you don't know who I am. You don't know why I'm here. I have never in any way, shape, or form publicly been affiliated with the Flat Earth movement. I am not someone that is on the front line waging that relentless, constant war, trying to put forth this message. I have never been that man. But today I'm standing here because this is an opportunity that I have to share a stage with people that have something that I needed to understand my whole life, and it was witnessed in them. It was witnessed in you. It was witnessed with these crazy people that loved the truth more than they loved the comfortable sands of ignorance that they'd crawled into and been settled down into their whole lives. You are the people that are willing to look in the face of madness and say, I am not afraid of that. I don't know why I am the way I am. I don't know what is going on out there, but something is wrong, and I need to know what it is. I had that in my heart. I had a hunger when I was young to experience life, to know what it looked like to go home and know that it was safe. I was not born in the normal land of the living. I was pressed in between that space and the land of the dead. We're all sitting here talking about these systems and these people and these monsters at times who go around and do these things, and they lie and they cheat and they steal from us. Who are these people? They're your neighbors. They're your coworkers. They're your friends. They're your bosses, your CEOs, your presidents, your pastors, your priests. See, the enemy strategically has sown his agents into the world. It doesn't take many to cause dissension in a body of people that have a single idea that they all agree on. But along that journey, people have come along and will crush off pieces of the truth, biting them off and tearing them apart because they know the most dangerous thing in the room, the most dangerous man in the room, the most dangerous woman in the room, the most dangerous child in the room is one who has absolute convictions for what they believe, passions that burn incessantly in their heart to make them want to go forward no matter the cost, no matter the price. They will not relent. You are relentless. You will not quit. Why won't we go away? Because we have faith in what we have come to know by testing, evaluating, seeing, coming to understand, battling in frustration, weeping in anguish, furious at the way we've been treated, shaking our fists at the skies as they're spraying things on our heads and we can do nothing. But we can have our belief. They cannot steal that from you unless you allow them. I allowed people in my life to come along when I didn't know any better, when I didn't have such a thing as free choice in the matter, and steal away my passions, to steal away the things that made me who I was, to steal my identity, and to split it into pieces. And then to take those pieces and parts and personalities and craft them into an image that would bear forth their good fruit on this earth. I'm not talking in metaphor. I'm talking about the literal reality of systematic, intentional torment, ongoing anguish, psychological, physical, emotional, sexual abuse in order to cause someone at a young age to shatter into pieces. Modern psychologists like to call it dissociative identity disorder. Distancing yourself, separating yourself from who you are, who you were. Instead, people that are master hypnotists will use that and craft in you the ability to go do things against your will. They constantly impregnate your mind with these ideas of what you should be doing, and your job, your function, your role, your identity is crafted by them. My family, the Reynolds family, are known because our products are in your houses. Whether it's aluminum foil or it's Camel cigarettes, Nabisco foods. We're not one of those big, scary, intense names like the Rothschilds out there. We do not bow down before princes and kings. We are the illegitimate sons who came to an understanding of a way to manipulate people, came to an idea that perhaps it would be more effective for us to utilize compromise to build our kingdom, to compromise people by exploiting our own children. So that is what my family has figured out a system to do. So the Reynolds traffic really in secrets. We build black books on people. We dive into the little minds and their hearts, and we figure out what it is that makes them tick, and then we find a way to twist it, corrupt it, pervert it, and control that individual until they do our will, right? That's called making a slave. That's what my family's legacy has been on this earth. Poisoning you. Filling your homes with the disease of their own design. A gentleman named Reynolds is the first man who really made that decision in our family line. He had two sons, Abram Reynolds and Richard Joshua Reynolds. And those two men made a decision with their father who showed them and initiated them into an old way, the old religions, as we like to call it. So when you go dig up these mounds in Ohio and you suddenly come across old tomes and books and objects and all these things that the high priests at those times were utilizing in their rituals, what do you do with that kind of thing? Well, for them, they said, why don't we just do that now? Seemed like a good idea at the time. So the cost of that, they produced something called the Judas coin or the Joshua coin. They believed to be it was an object that was one of the original pieces of those 30 pieces of silver that Judas used to betray Jesus Christ. And what they did is a ritual where they touched that to their gold and their fortunes, and they believed that through bloodlust, betrayal, envy, murder, strife, suffering, you could build an empire, manifest a titan of an industry. And if you look around in the 1800s, you see this happen with all these different families that came out of nothing, were initiated into those old ways. And the cost of it is your children. For some in the room, that seems insane. By the end of this, you and I are going to be sitting here realizing you've done the same thing. Each and every one of us. They did this ritual, and immediately after that, they gave their children smallpox vaccines, killed all three of them, except the two brothers. So all of the power and the life and the futures and the endowments that those children should have had went to those two men. And those two men set out on their courses to build their fortunes. And they strived away, and one of them built the Reynolds aluminum company that turned into all of what we're talking about with Reynolds Wrap and everything else. And the other one built all of this cigarettes and tobacco, and he figured out a way to make you believe that it was better to put the poison in your body than to throw it on the ground. They began to meet with men like Edward Bernays. If you do not know who that man is, you need to know who that man is. Because he orchestrated everything in this world that you see as evil that we're talking about. He is the man who developed those systems of engineering consent. This is his book called Propaganda. Propaganda is the means by which we control individuals and engineer their desire to do what we want them to do. We call that manipulation other ways. He was a very masterful linguist and making you realize that the most disgusting ways to manipulate people were powerful, effective, and precise, and calculating. He said the single most important, I'm just going to read it from him so you guys can see this, because the single most important thing you can be doing is turning off those things, those black scrying mirrors, and reading the books that they wrote that told you the methods to the madness that are out there. This book is not big. It is not hard to read, but it will tell you why the world is the way it is more than you can comprehend. Modern propaganda is a consistent, enduring effort to create or shape events to influence the relations of the public to an enterprise, idea, or group. This practice of creating circumstances and of creating pictures in the minds of millions of persons is very common. Virtually no important undertaking is now carried on without it. The important thing is that it is universal, that it is continuous, and it is the sum total in its regimenting the public mind every bit as much as an army of regiments the bodies of its soldiers. He said, occupy the mental space of people's minds. If you fill it with an image, if you fill it with an idea continually, relentlessly, over and over and over and over again, they will make a decision and act out of it. People are sitting here wondering why from birth we're seeing those globes. From birth we're seeing this food that's represented for us as something we can eat. Meanwhile, it's poison in every other cabinet that we keep in our house. My family decided it would be a good idea to do the same thing with me. My dad and my parents made that decision, whether under their own will or others, to do the same thing so they could have access to the family fortune, fame, and connection network. So I was thrown into the world of child pornography, pedophilia, exploitation, and ritualistic abuse. I was passed through those same rituals so that they could garner the power and talk to these demons that they believed through goetic magic would download for them the information of what the future would be. Many of these rituals took place under a bridge that every one of you is going to recognize once I sing a little nursery rhyme that you've heard hundreds and thousands of times in your life. Lake Havasu City, Arizona has a bridge there called the London Bridge. And it is the literal London Bridge, shipped over brick by brick all the way from London, across the Thames. And that nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down, falling down. Where does that come from? Why is that in our minds? If you go to Wikipedia right now, it literally says child sacrifice. It said that in the foundation stones of the London Bridge, you had to bury alive a child and or kill a child in order to maintain those foundational stones from falling down. And that's what we sing to our children. That's just somehow in all of our minds all the time whenever we want it to be. Meanwhile, we don't understand why that is the way it is. But I was taken into those chambers. I was used in those ways, and I made covenants with evil, wicked, vile things. Creatures that people don't think are real. These cosmic marauders, these spiritual powers are absolutely real. I didn't know people didn't think this was real, that there was a spiritual war between light and darkness, between good and evil. Meanwhile, the world will represent themselves as good, and they are really just bad and evil, battling it out. I didn't know any better. I was a child. I didn't know that it wasn't okay. So I took from that this anger and this bitterness and this hatred for the people that were doing this to me and the people that I loved and cared about. And I had rage in my heart. And I welcomed it. And I relished it. And I figured there was more power in that than there would ever be in the church. Because this whole time my family went to every Christian church, Pentecostal, Baptist, all kinds of different denominations. And there I sat like any good little Christian boy, listening to people come on stage and talk about this Jesus and talk about this God, talk about the power and this authority, and all the while never knowing why they couldn't see the monster sitting in the front row. So I became embittered towards that church. I was angry, not with the God they talked about, but with the men who stood on stages like this and said they believed that book. Meanwhile, they didn't do what it said, which is to look after the orphans and the widows, to care for those who don't have one to care for them, to rescue those who are in bondage, to heal the brokenhearted, to set captives free. I didn't know that there were people that believed that and lived it for 20 years of my life. So instead, I took that rage and I took that violence and I put it in the edge of steel. And they showed me, this is the bad guy. Go kill him. And I did. I never wanted to be a murderer when I was young. Until I did. And I became wholly engrossed in a culture of death. And the United States military loves young men like that, because they know how to find them. And so as a junior in high school, I was emancipated to the United States Army. And I was placed in that squeaky in-between worlds where you go do things that don't actually happen and never exist. So you become either disavowed, unacknowledged, or you go into these little special access projects and you're told that you're going to be a hero. You're going to be a hero. And be a part of a team that's going to go eradicate all these kinds of bad, wicked, evil people in the world. And I chased that. I believed that. And then I ran to the end of it, and after all the bloodshed, after all the violence, after all the hatred, after all the killing was done, I was unsatisfied. I was restless. That itch was not scratched. Because you can't kill death by shedding more blood. And so I got out of that, and I was like wanting to be healed. I wanted to heal other people, so I dove into the field of psychology. And I went into the practice of that, trying to see if I could be a part of someone else being healed, because I'd left so much carnage in my past that I have a massive debt of survivor's guilt weighing on my shoulders. And so I would go work in residential units where children are being constantly abused and then ripped out of that place and dropped into a locked facility and being told, this is how we're going to fix you. More drugs, more psychological manipulation, no deliverance, no complete healings. So for 10 years, I saw over and over and over again the system of mental health industry in the United States. I watched veterans, brothers that I had shed my blood with, die by their own hands. Once we were used up by them, you go kill yourself. Like any good soldier, you go die. Not on the battlefield, because then they have to pay your insurance policy. So instead, they engineer you to kill yourself. So people that I loved, person after person after person, dozens of veterans every single day, killing themselves, killing themselves, killing themselves. Why? By design. I would have been a product of that had not the Most High God delivered me and interceded for me when I had been shot and stabbed by my own hands and was bleeding to death in my parents' basement. So my first introduction to the world stage was mockery, belittlement, shame, disorder. That's what I was thrown to the wolves as. But instead, my path of redemption started there. And I got to be placed in the room where I got to see and meet a woman who later on would become my wife. I went to that college, I left that life behind, I buried those secrets, and I met her, and I just wanted to have a normal life. And so that's what we tried. I shifted away from those personalities that I once utilized, and I became just somebody who was insatiably happy and lovey and could get forward in this world. But there along that journey, my mind went back to the old ways, and I did not know how to get out. I did not know what to do, and then suddenly I went to a conference where a man named Russ Dizdar was talking from the stage about people that live in these societies, that work and operate in this underworld. And he described me in such a way that I was weeping. For years of my life, I strapped blades to my chest. Whether I was waking, sleeping, showering, at any other time, I had blades strapped to my entire body, ready to work. For years, out of nowhere. Never did that, and then one day I just started doing that absolutely and digging ditches in the woods where I could hide all kinds of things. I was a different person, and my wife lost the man she married. But then that man from stage described what was happening to me, and I saw conviction in that man, and I saw these people that were willing to be mocked for the sake of what they believed, and I needed to know what they knew. I needed to know this God they talked about, like they knew him. But more than that, I needed their conviction. I needed their fearlessness. I needed their boldness. So for years, I was one of those voyeuristic people, like so many of you watching right now, and who will watch this later, just taking it in, needing to see and watch. And so many of us have lost sight of that. That there is millions of people that you never see watching what you will do with what you've been entrusted with. They're always watching. I was one of those people. I wanted to see if you were willing to lose everything you ever had in your life for the sake of what you believed. And then once that happened, that you would stay on it, that you would press through, that you would persevere. I wanted to see men that were in their proper roles within a home, whose houses were in order, who fiercely gave themselves over for their wives, their children, who hungered for hope and healing in their own hearts, and waged war with the man in the mirror and fought for a better future for their children. I saw that happening time and time again. I've got to see so many of you in here. One of my deepest joys is that I see so many young parents and families in here. I love that. Imagine what you could have done if you started in the position of truth. Can you even fathom what you would have been like if 65 years ago you started in a home that wouldn't manipulate you, that wouldn't coerce you, that wouldn't control you, that wouldn't divorce you and send you away to a school to be indoctrinated into a system of beliefs where other people could take your children and rape them by injecting things into their bodies against your consent or theirs, and then when they die, those children are never remembered as heroes. Laurel Austin, are you in here? That woman right there, she has a testimony all her own that deserves its time. But let me tell you this, those children, her children being some of them, when they're damaged, and after those vaccinations and their children are never come back to that same way, they don't get remembered. They get mocked when they talk about it. But we have Veterans Day for our veterans, those good men who died like good soldiers do, but not for the ones that killed themselves, do we? No, we shame them. Our systems are broken. And it's because we failed to guard against it. The baby boomer generation has failed to keep watch, to be on guard, to protect their children. You failed in that. Not all of you, but you know exactly what I mean. You sent your children away to be raised by other men, by other women, outside of your control. You gave them away. Gladly, eagerly, because not you wanted to, but you've been made to believe you wanted to. That a career was better for a woman than raising a family. How many women have I known in my life and you've known in your lives that are desperately miserable at their jobs, have their little keepsake pictures of their children on their desk and a picture of the outside world, and they're miserable? That's because your children need you. They desperately need you. You are supposed to be the ones to protect them. You are supposed to be the ones that show them the truth and show them the deception. You are supposed to be the people that are advocating in other people's lives around you the true course of life for them and for you by how you live it. Do not doubt that you have a purpose in this world that is far greater than anything they've told you. They would never tell you that you had that kind of power to change people's lives. But a 13-year-old girl on a school bus changed my life. She showed me power and authority and conviction at a moment in my life where I had none of it. She was the only Christian I saw with authority, and she wasn't afraid of me. She wasn't afraid of my madness and my monsters. There's so much more faith in our children than we have in our hearts. They're not afraid to talk to their friends about this. I'm so convicted when my 3-year-old daughter starts talking to people about these things, and I'm like, we just met these people? Like, could we not talk about that yet? Like, she's like, see, that's a chemtrail. It's poison. She's amazing. And yet I sit there at the same moment and there's a policing in my own head that I shouldn't, we don't want to talk about, like, we got to build a little bit of a relationship, like we just met these people, like, why I want to almost police my own child. And at the same time I write books about it and I speak on stages telling people they themselves need to be willing to stand for their convictions. It's hard to do that. It stinks to feel that way when people are looking at you like, what in the world are you talking about? That gets exhausting. But I saw that over and over again, and I began to see that it was better to follow after the case of the crazies with you guys than it would ever be to follow the madness that this world was providing. Because in that confusion and in the chaos that they try to paint this as, and all the lies and obfuscation that they say this movement or that movement or any of the truth movements have, you guys have the conviction, and there is not confusion. Do not be willing to lose your sight of what it is that you have found to be the truth. For 4 years, we've been doing these things. Years and years and years. I know there's many in the room that have been doing this much longer than that. I know there's so many people here who have done that. But we need to be willing to guard our homes far more intentionally than we guard our YouTube platforms, our channels, and all of the different jobs that we have and the careers that we have. We need to guard our hearts, guard our minds, guard our eyes, guard our ears, because they're continually, constantly pumping out this nonsense into the world, and it's strategic, and it's intentional, and it's engineering your future children's consent to what they want them to be, the good little puppets that they will be. Guard your own mind from it. I had a decision to make 3.5 years into my marriage of whether or not I was going to tell my wife these things. And I relied and I borrowed the inspiration that I'd found from you guys. And I took that courage and I shared with her, and she did not run from me. She did not leave me. She did not abandon me. But she believed in the covenant that we had as a marriage, that we would press through no matter what. And it cost us everything we had to stand for the truth, to go to my family members and say, I forgive you. I have found freedom and healing and deliverance for the madness from my past, and you too can. And instead they sent people to try to murder my wife and I when she was pregnant with my 7-month-old daughter. But they cannot steal what is not theirs to take. My life is sealed away, and it is untakeable from any of you unless he so deems it. But that being said, I found deliverance in a conference room in Dallas 3 years ago. And that was where my journey started. Where that tree in that hand right there was ripped out of my head. And I had freedom come into my life. And my wife and I had faith and conviction that we would be set free from this. And I began to see the fruit that comes from standing for what you believe. And it's brutal. And it's painful. And it's exhausting. And finances go, and friends go, and homes go, and jobs go, and everything that you once believed was going to take care of you and provide for you slips away and drips away, and your channels get torn down and demonetized, and the platform is taken, and they deem different ways of using their AIs to battle it back, and over, all of you guys have suffered more than enough. You don't need me to tell you anything about that. But what you do need to remember is that because of people like you and Robbie Davidson, a man who didn't know me at all, I was able to take his YouTube videos and show them to this group that I was working with as a treatment center for substance addictions. We called it the Red Pill Group. You know, yeah. We watched these videos, and I said, any question that you've ever had about things that no one answered, we can talk about it here. And we began to watch these videos together, and I got to see the hunger in the younger generation for the truth. They're not idiots. Stop mocking millennials. Stop mocking the next generation. You're playing in their game. Love them. Care about them. Die for them. Suffer for them. You're ahead of us. If you're older than us, help us. Find a way to use your resources, mental, emotional, physical, financial, to equip the people that you see, love, and care about and believe in so they can go fulfill their callings on this earth. They might have 4 more decades to go. You may have 5 minutes to go. We don't know. But use what you can to help those that you have around you. Stop fighting each other. Stop picking each other apart and coming along and fracturing off more and more pieces of people's identities, their passions, their beliefs. There's enough people that are out there to do that already. We cannot be a group of people that follow in those footsteps. Because those foundation stones were laid in lies. We rejected them. So don't go set a new course of deception in your own life by convincing yourself that those people are the monsters and that guy's the bad guy, and if only we took him out, it would fix everything. Don't do it. There's power in maintaining integrity of heart, in allowing healing to come into those areas, and when love can cover those areas. My wife had love for me, and it covered many of my sins, many of my transgressions, and it washed me free of the shame for the first time in my life. Many of you need to love each other more than you love yourself. In doing so, you abstain from their system. You step back, and you suddenly have breathing space. And you can look and see clearly through all of that chaos and all of that confusion. The only way to play their game, and the only way to win in their game, is just to not play. Take your families out of that system. For my wife and I, that literally meant selling everything we have and moving into an RV and traveling around aimlessly and finding a way to look what it's like to grow food with our hands and to taste of the fruit of my labors and to see that God was good in my life. And so my wife and I have been blessed to lose everything, because in doing so, we have gained a greater life and a greater inheritance that is untakeable. You can't take it from me. I'm storing up treasure in places that are unseen. I don't even know the work that I do so many times, but now I get to work by the sweat of my brow and enjoy the fruits of my labor, and my children are safe because they're with me, because I am a good protector. And so are you men. You were made to be a protector. You were made to be a provider. You were made to guard the covenant of your home. You were made to stand there in the face of the monsters around and these dragons that were running our world and say, I am not afraid of you. This is my house. And when we're in my house, that is not allowed. Don't allow these practices into your homes. Don't stream it into your house by you watching pornography and ruining your mind so that you no longer have sex with your wife, so that you no longer look at women with true identity that they have. You're corrupting yourselves. You're allowing the enemy to steal from you the hope that you have and the confidence of seeing yourself. You can't even look people in the eye because you're so overcome with shame. That's strategic. That's intentional. That's why porn is accessible to a 2-year-old. Aleister Crowley, founder of the Ordo Templar Orientis, left-hand path practitioner, famously has said in his book of the law, which is an absolute denigration and a demonically inspired text of the deepest kind, that their agenda, the only way that they can really accomplish what it is that they're setting out to do to bring in this age of Horus, the crowned and conquering king that they were trying to raise up, was to make sure that children were exposed to every sexual act by the age of 9. And some of you are shocked. But you send your children to sex education at 9 years old. And that's shocking. It's more offensive for me to talk about like ritualistic abuse in a church. I've never been invited to a church to speak. But they'll go let their children watch a Disney movie where the priest is marrying a hybrid mermaid who just pledged her soul to a witch under the water, and he has an erection as he's marrying them, this Catholic priest. That's your Little Mermaid. Okay, that's being exposed to sexual acts. They put a giant phallus on the front of the cover just so you could see it a little more clearly. That's strategic. That's defiling your children. That's wicked. But you gave them the right to do it. You didn't guard your house. Guard your children. Dear God, please guard your children. Guard them from yourself if that's what it takes. Because sometimes we're the monster in the mirror. Guard them from your apathy. Guard them from your indifference. Guard them from your hatred for who you've become. Be willing to stand for what you know to be the truth and let them look at their dad, let them look at their mom, let them look at their brother, let them look at their boss, their CEO, and see that person has something I've never seen before. They won't mock you after a while because you rob them of their words of accusations by your consistent living in a set-apart way. You'll steal those words out of their mouth. And they cannot curse you, they cannot condemn you because of the way that they see the fruit of your children, the fruit of your house is beautiful. It's lovely. There's peace when I'm around this guy. She has so much joy. I've never felt more loved and cared about in my life than after I got done talking to her. I did the same mistake that many of you have done with this information, and I went and blasted it to every person I possibly could. I berated them constantly. You're drinking poison, you know that, right? Like hydrofluorosilicic acid, right? Okay, let me tell you about hydrofluoric. Fluoride is in everything. And you just go to everybody you can, and you're trying to convince them and make them understand because you realize that better things can happen when you drink different water, if you eat different food, if you didn't look at this, if you looked at this, and you were so passionate and fired up, but many of you lost the love. And so to them, it was just nonsense, banging gongs. They couldn't receive anything you had to say because you used to care about them. You cared about who they were. You cared about what it was that brought them to where they are today. We must remember to love each other. And out of the sincerity of love, lay down your life for them. Sacrifice your future for them. Sacrifice your career for them. Be someone that is worthy to have what you've been entrusted with. Have character. Turn off the television. turn off your phone. Let your children get the one thing that you actually can give them, which is your time and your attention. Because when they walk out that doors, there's people lining up who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars, billions, and now trillions and tens of trillions of dollars to make sure that your children's minds are owned, that your mind is owned. So work harder than they do for the sake of what you believe in. Be committed to what you found to be the truth. Sacrifice everything you ever had when you found that great pearl. Give it all up. Because you know what I found? I have never been more satisfied in my life than to break bread with my wife, than to eat the fruit of my labor, and to see that my wife was taking care of my children. They were safe. They were protected. They were cherished. They were loved. They were endured. That is the first generation born free, standing right there. That's the fruit of my house. I won't hide who I am and who I've been. Everything I've ever done, I wrote in there. My deepest shame, my most embarrassing, awful, disgusting moments are in there. Nothing in that is more graphic than what you'll see in a Disney movie. Nothing in that is more scary than anything you've seen in a PG-13 film. And yet time after time after time, people will come up to me and say, I can't get past the first page. I'm not joking. People here in this room, like today, like wide awake people that love all this stuff we're talking about, can't hear me talk for 5 minutes without leaving the room. And by doing so, you miss the power of freedom that comes by staying through the scary stuff, because nobody wants to hear about that. But if you continue to turn away, if you continue to be apathetic and indifferent towards the deepest and most depraved aspects of radical, intelligent evil, it gets to continue to live on in that dark space of your indifference, of your fear. And then when people like me or children like what I was when I was young come into your path or come into your life, or you suddenly see them like teachers in classrooms. I have a whole chapter in here about teachers. Seeing but never understanding. Not making a difference in my life. More concerned about the vocab words than they were about the bruises, the marks, and the bleeding. I'm not mad at them. I'm mad at the system and the people the things that inspired a system like that to be orchestrated. I'm more mad at that. I'm angry that they've been beguiled. That the person who's doing that job loved people. They love children. They want to protect them. They want to see them have a good future and a good education. They wholeheartedly believe in what they're doing. But so did my family. My family was the nicest people you'll ever meet. My dad could have made you laugh in 5 seconds, no matter what you were, no matter who you were. The most wonderful people. Every time you leave the room, you felt refreshed. That's strategic. Because you're never going to get away with radical, ongoing, multi-generational, constant corruption and compromise of people around you unless you hide amongst them. So they strip down their wealth and they move it out and they put it into trust funds in places none of you can touch and access or get around to. And they hide in middle-class neighborhoods, lower-class neighborhoods. And they're okay with that because they have a purpose. They sacrifice their fortunes to accomplish their work. They give it up because money is not what you think it is. They know that. The riches that they hold, though, are full of blood. And it's better to have riches that come through belief, because nobody can steal your belief from you unless you allow it. And I am asking each and every one of you not to lose sight of what it was that first drew you in, that first made you hungry for the truth, that first made you passionate about what you believed in. So many of you have grown weary of doing what is good. So many of you have given up. So many of you have literally left the movements, have left the field. You quit. Get back up. Stand. Stand. Having done all these things, we must yet stand. That's because you're going to get knocked down. If you got a shield, it's because you're supposed to get shot. Like, it's designed to take the hits. Use it. Get up and keep going. Get over it. So have we all suffered for the sake of the truth. Go read a book called Tortured for Christ. You want to read about people that loved their enemies, that cared about them, that gave themselves for them? Go read about people that literally gave everything they had for the people that were perpetrating the madness against them. You know what that does? It so unsettles you when you're in that world. I had these believers that came into my life when I was raging and everything else that had so much love for me that I could not take it. It scared me. I didn't know how to handle that love. It still scares me. Because love is far greater of a weapon, far greater of a tool, far greater of a foundation that you could lay your house in than any fear, than any other thing that you have ever seen and experienced in your life. Lay love over these people. Let them know that you love them. Let you know that you have known the truth and you have found it and you care about it and you're passionate. And they may mock you for a while. They may hate you for the rest of your life. But it does not matter if you do sincerely love them. They are willing to overlook those things. So don't give up on those people that mocked you. Don't give up on those people that used their power and their tools and their authority to take you out. Don't be angry at them. Don't be angry at them. Have mercy for those who doubt. Be patient for them. You were ignorant as they were. You didn't know, but then you did. And it's what you do with that makes the difference. It's what you're willing to do with the truths that you found here that makes the difference. And so much of this can get off the rails if we don't maintain the consistency of remembering the convictions and the whys. I am asking each and every one of you to be willing to stay and stand and fight day after day. Not just here when you have all of the backing and all of the enthusiasm and all of the passion and all of the zeal. I'm saying like in 6 months, when you still cannot get a job. Because the last job you had, they required and mandated you to take vaccines into your body. My wife and I experienced this in the healthcare industry as a nurse. She refused. That is unallowable, honey. You can't do that these days because we have 90% quotas that must be met. How is it that they can mandate rape on my wife when she's outside my house? How is it they can mandate these things and enforce them? If that's the case, abstain. That's the true abstinence message you need to hear. Abstain from their system. Set yourself apart, and you know what you'll realize? You didn't need it. There is more that will provide for you in the wilderness, in the woods, in the forests, and in the fields than you can ever find in that field of failure that we call our work systems and these career paths that we've found and been beguiled to believe in. Don't put your faith in those pesky little things like that. Put your faith and your hope and your trust in an unshakable Creator who authored this world, who gave us hope, who gave us courage. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. I am indebted to you because you have been willing to suffer those scourges. You have taken those lashings on your back. You have stood and you have continued to stand even after all of these things have come against you. You got up and you kept going. That is what it takes. Be relentless. Be relentless. Don't think just because you've come to know the truth that you found all of it. In 2 years, how much more will you have come to know and understand? In 2 years' time, how much more will your children come to understand? In 2 years' time, where will this movement be? I have no idea. This may be the last time any of us ever gather in a room like this for a conference like this. So take heart of what you have heard here. Take courage in that what you have shared here. But be passionate about it and share it. Don't take your testimonies and hide them because you're ashamed. Some of you have been the monsters in the room. Some of you have been the murderers in the room. Some of you have been the ones who ruined your own children. Weep with them. Beg them to forgive you, to have mercy on you. You didn't know any better. I'm not saying every one of you is able to do this tomorrow, but please grab your children and look them in the eyes and say, I'm sorry I failed to protect you. I'm sorry I let poison come into our house. I am sorry. Repent. Turn, go away. Devote yourself to something better. Some of you need to be writing a book today. Some of you have so much story in your hearts that it's pouring out of you, out of every single seam of your being. You need to share your story. You need to share your testimony. You need to be willing to stand there with the people that you love and say these crazy things. They need you. Because if someone had not have been that for me, I would still be out there hunting monsters at night. Instead, I'm in rooms like this, and I have a wife and children who love me and care about me, and people around me who are willing to follow with me as we go and charge into the face of madness and darkness and say, we love you, we care about you, and we will fight for you. Whether you're the one who did this to my children or not, I am willing to stand here and say, I forgive you. Nothing you have done, nothing you will ever do can ever separate you from the love that I have for you and the love that the Father has for all of those who are walking on this earth. He is the great creator. He orchestrated my life of madness into a life of peace. He alone can make a monster into a man again. He is the only one I've ever known that could do that. No pharmaceuticals cured me. No drugs cured me. No amount of any chasing of the wind that I ever did fixed me. I spent years of my life with these people who so many of us embody evil. The governors, the counselors, the controllers, the founders of companies, the bitten apple. I drove them around as their little bodyguard and protective asset agent, driving them back and forth after they'd retired from settling and founding iTunes. And I heard time after time again from the governor's family and from the CEOs, I heard the same misery that every one of us has experienced in our normal life. Because they chased an empty well. They are no happier than you. They lay down in grief. They are tormented at night by their memories, their dreams, the nightmares of what they've been a part of. They are corrupted. They corrupted their children, and they live in that because they believe that nothing can fix that. Nothing can undo what they did. But that's a lie. Because you can immediately start today and make a different decision to change the trajectory of who you've been and follow after something that is more important than anything you've ever found, which is the truth. Because the truth is the only foundational things we can ever lay our hearts in. With great truth, with great love, we must press forward and fight for those that we love, fight for those that we hated, fight for those that we have found to believe once were our enemies that instead have turned tail on the enemy, become a double agent, and are willing to infiltrate their organizations and bring forth evidence to vindicate all those who come before us. Some of you have been placed strategically in those environments so that you can bring forth evidence. And I encourage you to not be afraid of what an NDA can do to you when you break it. I'm a living witness against the darkest things. You can come out and speak these secrets. They're lying when they say they have omniscient power to control you and keep you in check. They're lying when they say that they will find you and get you no matter what you do. No, there's a greater authority that they can't steal your life unless it's given to them. I was speaking at a conference in Canada in June. After that conference, it was the first time I ever started revealing some of the names more specifically of the individuals and the practitioners of these things that have been happening in my life. There was a lot of people that were very unhappy that I'd done that, and we began to receive threats over and over again about what was going on in the world, directly targeting me and my family. And I had that fear pressing on my back because for the first time in my life, I began to really want to live. I really want to see what my daughters turn into. I really want to know what happens in my future. I really want to experience family and peace and rest. And I was just getting a taste for it when strategic people instead orchestrated a hit on me and tried to kill me on the side of the road and smashed into me and launched my body 35 feet into the air. And bleeding there on the side of the road. All I wanted to do was live. All I wanted to do was live. All I wanted to do was see my wife one more time. I wanted to be there for my children. She was 7 months pregnant. I can't die on the side of the road because I'm driving around rich people at night because I can't get anything else done unless I go and do this. Because I've been conditioned just like you that I've got to go work to eat in this way. So I'll go be somebody else's good-looking bodyguard and make them smile and happy and be a good bartender for them. We'll make them laugh. And instead, I'm bleeding out on the side of the road. All I wanted to do was be home. I just want to be with them. I survived that, but I had a decision to make of whether or not I was willing to do it again when Robbie called me 2 weeks later and said, would you be willing to come up here and speak again? You guys don't know the cost behind the scenes. Chris and Liz Bailey hosted a conference called Take on the World 2018. The threats, the destruction that comes against you, children are lost. Children are being lost. While you guys go on thinking that we're shills or we're idiots or we're crazy. We're dying and we're suffering and we're getting up again and going after it again, and we're willing to suffer the scourge again and again and again, because that's what it takes. Sacrifice. It will require sacrifice for healing to come, for restoration to come. That is what you need, and that is what you guys are here for. You have sacrificed your time. You've sacrificed your attention. You've sacrificed your jobs, your careers, your futures, because you love the truth more than you love the lies. You are the bravest people I have ever met. You are courageous. You are inspiring. You are infectious. That is why they mock you. That is why they hate you. That is why they belittle you. Because you're dangerous. The most dangerous person in the room is the person with deep convictions for what they believe. Because then it cannot be corrupted. You can't bribe them. You can't coerce them. You can't control them. They hate that. So they'll go find another yes man to do it. Owen Benjamin, so many were up here embarrassed at some of the things he was saying, offended by the coarse language and the dirty jokes. And at the same time, I heard more actual gospel come out of his mouth than I heard in almost any churches I ever grew up in. Like he's sacrificing what he had for the sake of the truth. He says the logos, the logic, the logos is Jesus Christ in the flesh. My mouth fell open. You don't say things like that if you're in the club. You're not allowed to. You don't talk about transgender children and how evil it is to make a 3-year-old cut their penis off because they want to be a girl. He loses his career for the sake of that. He had a lot more to lose in different ways, but it's scalable. You need to be willing to lose something for the sake of the truths that you found. I don't know what it is that you guys came here to really find. Some of you have known this, have understood it for years, and are looking for something to just refresh yourselves. But the one thing I really hope each and every one of you will take from this time, take from this conference, take from all of the conferences and the movements before it, is that you would bring out of this convictions for what you know to be the truth, and that you would move and act on it, and that you would guard your homes, and that you would abstain from these systems, and that you would not be angry with the men that have been manipulated to believe these things, but instead that you would love them enough to stand there and be the one who would be the difference. Be willing to be that for somebody else every day you can. If it's your brother, if it's your friend, if it's your daughter, be the one who is standing in the gap, building a wall of protection, building a wall of mercy, building a wall of compassion, building a wall of truth around them. Guard them, protect them, insulate them. Be willing to offer to them a better path if so they choose. And if they don't, love them along that way too. Be considerate of what it is that you choose to do with your platforms. Be intentional, be strategic. Be smart, be cunning, be gentle, patient. Because by doing so, you're going to rob them of their accusations. And over time, sooner or later, I know there's mockers in this room that once mocked this, and instead they mock the conspiracies they used to believe in. So many of you used to make fun of us, and yet you're now here. Because over time and over experience, you can inspect people's fruits and see whether or not they are good, whether or not they come from evil sources. You all were made to bring good fruit on this earth. You were made to work by the sweat of your brow because it would heal you. So many of you just don't have the right kind of work in your life. Find the passion, find your calling, and know that with convictions you follow it out and you will fulfill it on this earth. I know that so many of you have given a lot to be here, and I want to respect the time that we have for the dinner that's coming up tonight. But I hope each and every one of you will take the time to be willing to intentionally study what it is that I have come to know and to believe to be the truth, which was the living and active Word of God that shaped me and changed me and cultivated in me a courage that could not be shaken. So I may not ever be invited to a church, but I will always be welcome in the true churches where people of beliefs gather together and are willing to stand and be courageous for what they believe. I am humbled to be called your friend. I am humbled to be called anything that you guys would be willing to me. If any of you would like to talk to me after, I am more than willing to be able to do that. But after all is said and done, with all the information you learned here, you have decisions that you have to make, whether you're willing to sacrifice for the truths that you've come, or whether you want to plug back into their systems. I hope each and every one of you will choose to be people of conviction rather than the cowards we've once been. Thank you so much.